let's switch it over to a little more positive side and talk about the defensive grades for this week. Let's talk about DeMeco Ryans' unit. And let's start off on a high note. Let's start off with the defensive line. Suneil, how'd you feel about how the defensive line performed against Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, before I get into that, I want to do this because we lump in the coaches. And unfortunately, there's multiple coaches, and it's not just DeMeco Ryans. I've done this on every stream that I've done since this game. DeMeco Ryans gets standing ovation for me. He has gone above and beyond of what the expectations are. And he is so much better than what Salah was in his first year. And this defense would be one of the most talked about defenses in the NFL based off of what DeMeco Ryans has been doing as the defensive coordinator if this team wasn't losing all of these games. Because if you think about coming the back-to-back weeks he just had, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and each game, the defense looked better and better and better. So going directly to your question, this defensive line to me gets an A. And the reason for it is, one, they made Kyler Murray's life difficult in the backfield. And the second biggest thing is they solved a problem that this 49ers defense has always had, and that is the mobile quarterback.
Containment.
And props to Eric Armstead, props to Nick Bosa, because their gap discipline was like some of the best that I've ever seen, because they stayed disciplined and always made Kyler Murray go back into the middle versus outside. And because of that, Kyler Murray wasn't able to beat us with his legs. It forced him to be an actual pocket quarterback. And they were averaging 35 points per game, Rob. And they struggled to put up 17 points against this defense with who I think is the best receiver in the league and some really, really good second and third options on a cornerback that's supposedly our biggest weakness. And they struggled to put up 17 points against this defense. So this defensive line, by all estimations to me, did exactly what they needed to do. And it's sad that they're being left hanging by an offense that can't put up points.
What a great way to put it there, Suneil. Leaving the offense hanging is so frustrating. The offense leaving the defense hanging is so frustrating because the performance by the defense is that damn good that it's just such a shame for it to go to waste. And I agree with your standing ovation for DeMeco Ryans. I thought that he did struggle a bit against Green Bay in making adjustments, but then came back incredibly strong the past 2 weeks. And I'm not going to fault him entirely for being unable to stop Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, because in my mind, while it is close and I understand you giving the edge to D-Hop, I think that that Davante would be the best receiver in the league and is near impossible to stop on any week. And Rodgers had one of his best games. I mean, just some of those dimes that he threw against us in week 3 were, in my mind, somewhat unstoppable, and therefore I don't fault this defense for it. And as it picked up the last 2 weeks, really incredible. So I'm with you there, and I've got the same grade. Defensive line was an A. They absolutely held Murray in check. To your point, this is an offense that had been putting up 35 every week. They were able to hold them. It was a close game. It was held in check the entirety of the game. I believe that he only broke contain really once, where Bosa came inside and he managed to get outside of him. But even that wasn't egregious. He had fewer than 250 yards passing. And when you have the balanced attack that the Cardinals do, I think they had 6 players coming into the game with 15 catches or more. And true Max, is it Max Williams, the tight end that got knocked out? Yeah, so unfortunate injury to him early in the game. But even so, still had 4 wide receivers and a running back that all are very capable pass catchers. And the 49ers were able to keep them in check primarily because of this defensive line and the job that they did in a uniform pass rush, getting pressure but not breaking containment. I honestly couldn't have asked for a better game from them. And to your point, that's what makes it sting that much more when you lose the game and you had such a dominant performance. I mean, credit to my man Nick Bosa is on pace for a hell of a season with these sack totals lining up. I feel pretty good about not having placed the bet for Fred Warner to win Defensive Player of the Year because things aren't breaking that way for my man All-Pro Fred. But I do feel bad for not placing the bet on Bosa because any game where he busts out and has 3 or 4 sacks, and we could be looking at a 20-plus sack season from my man here. So
Right.
it could be a Defensive Player of the Year type of season for Nick Bosa if things keep up as they are. But what if it's on a team with a losing record? You know, it's terrible. It's terrible. And it makes me feel sad when I get into how dominant this defensive line is and the simple fact that we lost that game. All right, moving on from our defensive line into our linebackers. For me, this one was a tough one to grade because I felt that they played well. They had a decent game. They contained the run. They contained Kyler Murray. It was solid tackling for the most part. I do wonder if we see more of Hufanga going forward over Marcel Harris after the bye until Big Play Dre is able to return. But I saw this as a decent performance for the linebackers, and I gave them a B.
Yeah, I agree. I think a B is fair. They didn't do anything out of the ordinary to like be an A. And if we're giving an A to the defensive line, they definitely didn't play to the level of the defensive line. But look, the running game didn't get off, and Chase Edmonds, even though he was coming off of an injury, was a little nicked up. It's still a very, very good running back. So is James Conner. He's a decent running back. And we had been gashed in the running game, and we weren't. This running game rushing attack that the Cardinals had didn't gash us. And a lot of that plays into the linebackers getting up into the line and being sound tacklers. I think Fred Warner is quietly having a really, really good season, but it's extremely quiet, right? It's
very
not
quiet.
any
Very
of those
quiet.
wow moments that we're used to seeing from Fred Warner. And I think sometimes because it's not those explosive plays, you know, breaking up passes and interceptions and stuff like that, it makes us think that he's not having that good of a season. And I've been one to criticize Fred, but when you actually look at the numbers and see what he's doing, he is playing, you know, pretty solid ball. I think Aziz had some moments there that were really good against in protection and in you know, as far as tackling and whatnot. So yeah, I think a B is fair. They weren't super great, but they definitely weren't weaknesses or liabilities. So they get a solid B to me as well.
Yeah, I feel like Al-Shaair has performed well since coming in for Dre's injury. I do wonder about that third spot, but it's such a minor role within the defense that it is not a critical position of need for the 49ers. But I did like what I saw from Hufanga, especially when he got into Kyler Murray's face and caused that errant throw. That was fantastic defense. And he's just a baller. He seems to find himself in the right places at the right times.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to that depleted but very serviceable secondary that has played, in my estimation, significantly better than the group is made up of. Emmanuel Mosley is having a great season to this point. You wonder what it could have been if it weren't for the injury to Jason Verrett. But I feel as though Josh Norman, a few more penalties than you'd like to see, but he has been reasonably sound in coverage. And that, to me, is all that's expected from this group. That is what is needed from this group, is this group needs to play sound football. They need to be in the proper position to stop the big plays. They can't allow the big over-the-top plays beyond the defense. They have to be sound in coverage, and the D-line is what's going to set this defense apart. So to me, the expectations for the secondary are low. I was not pleased with the continuation of penalties that are an issue for this group And I understand some of those are veteran move, and also some were ticky-tack this week. But I will say, on the positive, they didn't allow a 100-yard receiver in a group that is incredibly talented. So for me, that was a B-plus effort.
Yeah, I think I'd give it more of a B minus, just because I think those penalties were costly. They helped the drives move forward, but they got that Dante Johnson tackle for the fumble. I think obviously was really great and great timing. Unfortunately, it only led to a field goal, but definitely was timely and needed. Um, Hopkins only got, in the fourth quarter, he had that drive where he kind of dominated, but it was more not luck, but opportunity meets preparation in a really, really elite receiver. The way that ball was underthrown and he was able to adjust to it, and it kind of made Jimmy Ward look out of position when it was just like he didn't expect the ball to be that underthrown. And then D-Hop made that ridiculous catch in the end zone, which, D-Hop is D-Hop for a reason. He's going to make that.
He sure is.
Rondell Moore had a ridiculous catch on the sideline that was, kind of like a momentum shifter as well. But I give him a B minus, because until they could, those penalties could stop being momentum shifters in the way that instead of getting the guys off the field, it continues to extend a drive. That's one thing that the secondary needs to get better at, whether it's that they're out of position, they're just physically outmatched, whatever the case may be, figure it out, because those pass interference balls are killer. And think about how great this defense would be if they could clean up those pass interferences. I'm talking about multiple 3-and-outs, multiple situations, and we're talking about maybe even the Cardinals not even score. Like, that could be 10 points off the board, really, if it wasn't for these pass interference plays.
Yeah, the other thing that I'll throw out there, the penalties are a big one for sure. Got to clean that up. We do also need to force more turnovers. It is an issue. I thought that it was amazing the fact that in practice this week we saw a video of the exact same thing that Dante Johnson ended up doing in game. Right? It just goes to show situational preparedness. Along the sideline, exactly what they had been practicing. Dante Johnson comes in, rips out the ball, and then as it's bouncing along the sideline, manages to recover it himself. I mean, that was a spectacular play by, let's just be honest about it, an otherwise unspectacular player for the most part. But give him credit for that play. It was amazing. I will say that I was a bit disappointed in the way in which Jimmy Ward did not locate that ball on the DeAndre Hopkins catch. I thought he had enough time to at least make a play on it, and it didn't feel as if the response was there. And Jimmy's ball skills are an area of opportunity for him. He has not been able to corral many interceptions in his career. I want to say his last pick was like 2016.
Right.
So
the only reason why I'll throw Jimmy Ward some bail is because I think he was getting ready for a jump ball with D-Hop, who's probably one of the best jump ball catchers in the league, if not the best. And you could tell the way he was like, his body momentum was going into trying to jump as high as possible to break up a pass. And then he looked back and he saw that it was underthrown. And at that point, shifting your weight is just really difficult. And D-Hop had already seen, his head was already turned, and he had realized that he didn't even go for the jump. He just went back towards the ball. So I think it was more just a bam kind of move. But definitely, I mean, this team was talking about getting more turnovers, and we haven't seen it. But you know what? We haven't seen a lot of stuff that they said that was going to happen this season. So
that's true. But to their credit, even without the turnovers, this defense is elite. And I'll just say that in closing before we shift to the next set of grades is that I thought for sure when Jason Verrett went down, prior to that, I thought we were a top 5 defense coming into the league. I thought we were set up perfectly, that if we stayed healthy, we would be a top 5 defense. When Jason Verrett went down in week 1, I immediately adjusted those expectations, and I think I adjusted them too far. I thought that would have a greater influence on our overall productivity as a defense than it has to this point. I still believe, given what we have seen to this point, if we see progression and we don't see a slew of injuries, which, that That's
It's a
not
big
out
if.
of the realm of possibility for this team. But as long as we stay reasonably healthy on defense and continue along this trend, I still think we have the potential to be a top 5 defense in this league with the way that they're playing to this point. In particular, if they can get some complementary football out of their damn offense and actually run the ball and maintain time of possession even better than we have to this point. Would you agree with that, or do you think I'm being overly
Absolutely.
optimistic there?
No, I mean, the way they played these past 3 quarterbacks, there's not any quarterback that's going to be significantly better that they're going to play this season than the 3 they just played. There might be quarterbacks that are better, but not to the extent that it's going to be like they're going to be able to do ridiculous things. There's not going to be any receiving cores that are significantly better than the receiving cores they just went up against.
That's a fact.
So to have the type of success that they had against these past 3 offenses that didn't score as many, that were below their average scoring each game against the 49ers, to me, just shows that this team is elite because, like I said, the Cardinals were scoring 35 points per game. They struggled to score 17. The Seahawks were scoring way over, the 28 points that they scored as well. And Green Bay scoring 28 points. We've seen them blow teams out and score way more, be in the 40s and 30s consistently as well. So the fact that these offenses that are really high-powered offenses struggle to score points against the 49ers, absolutely. They're a top 5 defense. And I would even say, Rob, even withstanding the injuries, because they've gone through all of these injuries, you know what I mean? And they're still performing. So what's to say that another injury is really going to make these guys play that much worse? I mean, they've played without all these players have been rotating in and out. So to me, I think that this defense will finish off top 5. And yeah, even better if they could have some scoring and, be able to rest a little bit more on the sideline.
I just have to call out for those viewing and for those watching the video later that you have just experienced some optimism here. You have just heard some positive things about these San Francisco 49ers, even sitting here painfully at 2-3, having dropped 3 in a row. There is reason for optimism, 49er faithful. I am telling you.
I don't think so.
You got to hang your hat on this defense.
It doesn't lead the wins, as we've seen. So
it hasn't yet, Suneil, but it will. It will, my friend.